Wow, thank you, Glenn. Thank you for standing in. We might have to get you to be a more regular substitute. Appreciate it. Okay, for our invocation, Robert Weston is going to give our invocation.
Today we've got a very important day. It's the day after the Super Bowl. A couple of things happened on this date in history in honor of our speaker today. The first opera in America opened in Charleston. The Boy Scouts of America, which is close to us, was incorporated. And the very first NFL draft occurred in 1936. Please bow your heads and pray with me. Lord, we are thankful for this day, for this beautiful weather that we have, for its blessings, the opportunities, and pray that you will provide us with the tools to tackle the many challenges that we face ahead. In a world where conflict often appears as a way of life, we lift up our voices in prayer and give thanks to you for the resources you have given us so that we may provide comfort, counsel, and service to those in need. As we gather today, we ask that you give your blessings to our speaker and to all of our community and world leaders and grant them the opportunity for success in making this world a better place. As Rotarians, we thank you for providing us the opportunity to instill hope in others through your service. And as football fans, we thank you for shining favorable light on Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. Bless this food to our nourishment. Bless the hands that prepared it, and bless each of us to your service. Amen.
Thank you, Robert. Wonderful blessing. Yes, that was a wonderful night. I don't know how much I want to comment on it, considering that Hal Stevenson might talk about it in health and happiness, but I know that Tom Brady was the oldest person to ever play in the Super Bowl in any position last night, and we had our first female ref who did a great job. And there were lots of other things that happened that were record-setting in that event as well. So, with our visiting Rotarians and guests, we'll have William Starr. William, here you go. Okay. Do we have any guests? We do.
This is Sergio Aparicio from the City of Columbia Economic Development Department. He also is the co-host of 1 Million Cups, which is a weekly entrepreneurial event held online.
Any more guests? Okay, great. Thank y'all so much. Next, with health and happiness, is past President Hal Stevenson.
Such a good cleaner, you know, you did a good job up here. Nobody's giving you any credit for that, so you're kidding.
During the inauguration, they had the guy going up there every time between every single speaker.
You watched that for training, didn't you? All right, hello everybody, happy Monday. Got a few things to share with you. First, I think I might have told some of you, my wife and I have been parenting for the last 3.5 weeks, our 4-year-old grandson from Albuquerque, because his mother was pregnant with twins. She delivered at 28 weeks on Thursday, a boy and a girl. They seem to be doing well. Appreciate any prayers if you're thinking about it, when you're doing your prayers, add them to it. It's never a slam dunk when they're in the NICU. William Starrett says that his dance company is coming back tomorrow. They are going to be performing off the wall and onto the stage. That's Dancing the Art of Jonathan Green. You might be familiar with that. On March 5th and 6th, they're going to do 3 performances. So put that on your calendar and try to make it. Kim Mitchell at Castle Brothers said they're going to be doing a Teacher Tuesday. So any school district employee within 50 miles of Irmo, right, they call Castle Brothers between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. They will go out and do a free maintenance check on their units, no matter how many units they have. She's given me a phone number. I can give it to you at 732-9669. But if you know anybody that works for a school district, that's a pretty good deal. So do that. I'm also playing a little bit of Wayne Cannon today, because Wayne is, of course, organizing us and doing it, but he gave me the magazine today. And it's really interesting because it talks about, it says how we did it. They were able to eradicate polio, wild polio from Africa. Back in 1996, that year they had an estimated 75,000 children across Africa who got polio, wild polio. Since then, there have been 9 billion doses of oral polio vaccine administered, preventing 1.8 million wild polio cases. You know, that's amazing. We're sitting over here, we really don't think much about polio except when we come to Rotary, but that is a heck of a lot of people, especially having come through the pandemic and think about it. So technology and vaccinations are good things and prevent some bad stuff. Okay, I'm not one mostly to do much joke telling, but with all these grandkids and being a parent again, kind of now, you know, I thought I would tell a dad joke. Now, some of you are dads, some of you know some dads, some of you had some dads. So, you know, a dad joke is a short joke, typically a pun, presented as a one-liner or a question and answer, but not a narrative. Generally inoffensive, dad jokes are stereotypically told by fathers among family, either with sincere humorous intent or to intentionally provoke a negative reaction to its overly simplistic humor. Many dad jokes may be considered anti-jokes, deriving humor from an intentionally unfunny punchline. You can see why I'm giving you all that background, so when I give you the punchline of the joke, you'll know that it's not. But before I do, one thing I neglected to let you know about is today's CARP message. And it's called Sundowners, Sundowning, or Sundown Syndrome. These terms refer to late afternoon or evening changes in behavior among people with Alzheimer's and other dementias. These might include mood swings, anxiety, sadness, energy surges, and increased confusion. They may lead to pacing, rocking, screaming, crying, disorientation, resistance, anger, and aggression. As Rotarians, we support research to conquer this disease. Remember the blue bucket on your table, and please make any checks out to the CARP Fund. And thank Frank Brown for always keeping us aware of this and on the front lines. So thank you, Frank, for that. Okay, so there were 2 guys sitting in a bar. And one guy noticed that the guy sitting next to him had a banana in his ear. And so he tapped the guy on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you know, you got a banana in your ear," and didn't get any response from that. And tapped him again, didn't get any response from that, which I'm not getting from Gracie right now. Tapped on the shoulder again, still no response. Hang on. I'm sorry, Gracie. I can't hear you. I've got a banana in my ear. So that is the punchline of the joke. Gracie bought this little telephone thing that actually works. So if you want a banana in your ear, you can get one. I'm sure Gracie knows where to find it. Have a great day.
Thank you, Hal, and I appreciate you not offending anybody with that. I don't think so, anyway. Okay. I do want to do our weekly vaccine check-in. I want you to raise the number of arms for the number of shots that you've already received for your COVID-19 vaccine. We have a couple of two-handers in here. We got a few. All right, great. We'll be doing that check-in from time to time throughout the spring. Glad to see those. All right, I believe the age of 65 and over it starts today throughout the state of South Carolina, so that's very good news. Do want everybody to remember the cart funds and the buckets on the tables. Please continue to eat and enjoy your meal. When you are finished eating and drinking, we do want you to put on your mask. There is a mask ordinance here in Columbia and in Richland County. We want everybody to feel comfortable. Some people are not attending the meetings because they don't feel comfortable, so please put the masks on when you're finished eating. Membership is essential to our club, as I would like to remind you all weekly. We do encourage everybody to invite prospects to our meeting, specifically any meeting, but always on the first Monday of the month. We have a Discover Rotary meeting. The next one will be March 1st at 11:30. Please encourage folks to attend. Financial update. You all have received your first quarter invoices for this year. We need you to pay those as soon as you can, if you haven't paid them already. I do want to have a little bit of tough talk here and make you all aware of a few things. The charitable gifts that we ask you to pay every quarter are on your invoices, okay? While they are not mandatory, they are essential to what we do as a club. The local education foundation gifts help us fund our annual scholarships, and this is the main philanthropic service that we do as a club. The Rotary International Foundation gifts that go to our global efforts like the polio vaccinations, clean water, and all the other wonderful things that the foundation does, we need those gifts. At the same time, if we qualify as an E-Ray club, that's E-R-E-Y, that's every Rotarian every year who gives $100 to the International Foundation, then we get to qualify for matching grants that double our club's philanthropy to the local community. Recently, these have been through the Gifts to Harvest Hope Food Bank and our food packing events. When members of our club do not contribute $100 every year, our club takes money out of our own coffers, our own accounts, and we make up the difference in order to qualify to be an E-Ray club, to get the needed matching funds. So if you don't give the charitable gifts, if you don't want to and you're unable to, that's certainly your choice, but it's actually costing the club money because we make up the differences for those folks in the club who cannot or will not or are not able to contribute the $100 to the RIF. If you choose to give directly to the Rotary International Foundation, you certainly can, and a lot of you do that. But our accounting system does not know that you've done that because you've gone around the capital consultants and our invoices. So we need you all to tell us. Let them know, hey, I gave online. Then we can take it off the invoices. The requested gifts were part of the orientation when you joined the club, and they remain a part of the Discover Rotary presentation every month. So there are no surprises. You don't have to give them, but they are essential to what we do, internationally and here locally. If anybody has any questions about that, please come to me. You don't need to go to capital consultants. They do what we tell them as a board. But this is the way we function now. We put it on the invoices. They're not mandatory, but they are essential. Just wanted to make that point. The club's board and administration, we're actually currently reviewing our finances. And we will be doing some things over the next 2 weeks to look at other clubs' finances and how they're handling them and what we need to be doing to make our ends meet at the end of the year. We will be meeting on February 22nd. I'll remind those members in the room and online that are watching. We are meeting as a board on the 22nd to discuss the finances and have our board meeting. So we'll be reporting to the club after that board meeting on what our plans are moving forward. Everything's fine, they just need to be tweaked. Many people paying their invoices. We still have a few minutes left. Before we introduce our speaker, I do want to have everybody at their tables take 2 minutes and introduce yourselves to your table mates. Take 30 seconds per person to talk about yourselves to your table mates. 2 minutes, 30 seconds per person, go.
I'm going to take my 30 seconds and talk to this person right here.
Yes, which means you're going to ignore me. I got it, it wasn't exciting.
Yeah. You can talk to Facebook. Everybody's on Facebook and talking to you right now. Yeah. Everybody, Blake says hi.
There you go.
Yeah. It's Deborah and Kate watching, so you can say hi, Deborah and Kate.
Hi, Deborah and Kate.
Do you guys want to tell us something about yourselves? How is Deborah doing? Kate, are your kids doing well? Deborah says hi. They miss us. We miss you guys. Hi, Christy. That's good. I'm glad they're back at school. Is work going well for you all? I didn't know you were in the hospital, Debbie. I'm glad you're home safe now.
All right, I hope you all know each other a little bit better. I know we don't have oftentimes to introduce ourselves to our table mates. And I do want to encourage you to sit at different tables every week. I know a lot of people sit with the same people every week, and you certainly know about each other's family and jobs and whatnot if you do that. But if you want to learn about new people and other people in our big club, please sit at different tables every week. We also have one more minute. I'm going to give one minute to Jim to talk about his experience this morning going through the line to get his COVID vaccine, just to give us a little update. Jim?
Thanks. Being a 65-year-old, I thought I was going to be in the line, get my shot this morning. So at 7 o'clock, I found the line. You just look for the bunch of cars that are blocking all the traffic. And so I waited, I went through the line about an hour and a half into it. I never knew where the line was going because you can't really see that far. But I went to the one at the stadium on Bluff Road. And so eventually, an hour and a half into it, a gentleman came down and I rolled my window down and he had a clipboard and I'm thinking, hey, I'm getting there, you know, he's gonna take my name, this is efficient, we're going. And he said, I just wanted to let you know that you're not going to get any, they've run out of the juice, you know, the vaccine, whatever. And I said, well, can I make an appointment? He says, no, but here's the phone call you can get. Now, while I was in line, I had the phone number that I was given, it's the one in the newspaper. And so I was online the entire 1.5 hours. And so I was very disappointed, but that's the way it was. So I just pulled out I don't know quite why other people were still in the line, but I went ahead and left and went home, and eventually, about at the 1 3/4 hour point, the lady got me on the line, and I said, oh, great, I can make an appointment. And I told her about my experience, and she said, well, actually, I'm not sure that I can help you, because everything that I have notice of in terms of the clinics, the hospital, Prisma, all the places that we're giving them in this area, were all filled up. So, and that changes depending on how much more stuff they have, where vaccines are coming in. But clearly, there are a lot of us 65-year-olds and over that were now joining the queue. So that didn't help. And then I said, well, is there any place in the state, I can drive and find it if you'll give me an appointment? She said, well, no, but here's the phone numbers. So I got 3 more phone numbers. In the end, I'm going to wait a while. So just tell you, it's nothing ugly. They're just having a hard time keeping track of the numbers of doses they're coming in and matching them up with it.
Thank you, Jim. If people have updated information on how to do that, please let us know. We'll try to put it in the newsletter, and of course it should be in the press. Okay, our introduction of our speaker is going to be our president-elect. It's going to be Blake Buchanan who will come up and introduce our speaker.
Just want to make sure you had done that again before I reached that. I think we have an expert, right? Catherine can give us updates every week if you want to give us exactly what's going on and
It's a Prisma Health update.
There you go. Maybe that's what we should add.
I would just
It's an update.
go there, if I can make a recommendation.
Exactly. So I want to do this introduction today for our speaker. It sounds like we've got an exciting program that we're going to have today, and I'll just read what I was kind of given here earlier as we talked for a few minutes. So studies and surveys show that most of us across all age groups and academic levels aren't familiar with the basics of our nation's history and don't know how the government works. Raise your hand if that's true. Okay, most of us probably took those classes back in like high school or something. It was like a whole semester or whatever you took it, American history and whatever, and you probably forgot it unless you stayed in it.
Talking about government works or doesn't work?
No, we're not. It says how government works. Our speaker today, Randolph G. Russell, is the author of American History in No Time, which is a quick and easy way to learn the fundamentals in just a few hours. Is that right? Hours. So that's what we needed back then. So we should have had that a long time ago. The book has been used at a number of colleges, but it's very easy for anyone to understand. So Russell's presentations about connecting with the past have been enjoyed by numerous civic groups across the country, including more than 100 Rotary clubs from Orlando to Kansas City to Las Vegas. The author is also an accomplished musician who has performed in many European countries and throughout the United States. Pretty cool. In business, he has held a number of financial management positions within companies in Georgia and Florida, and he holds degrees from the University of Miami and the University of Florida. Very unique. So, our speaker, Randolph Russell.
Well, thank you, Blake. Mason, it's a pleasure to be here. Really appreciate the invitation and working with Catherine to make all the arrangements to get me here today. My message today is about something that we all play a part in and something that impacts nearly every challenge we face as a country. After the Constitutional Convention adjourned in September of 1787, people in Philadelphia and around our young nation were anxious to know what had been decided. A woman came up to Benjamin Franklin and asked, "Well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" He replied, "A republic, if you can keep it." Thomas Jefferson once said, "If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was and never will be." The founders believed that this nation would be preserved in liberty only if we as citizens understood its history, embraced its founding principles, and had an appreciation for the sacrifices made to secure the freedoms it affords. So, how are we doing? I'm sure all of you have seen videos of people being stopped on the street and asked things about our country that should be common knowledge. The responses can be funny, like the person who actually thought taking the 5th was taking Friday off at work. Or the guy who described Columbus as the man who came to America and ate Thanksgiving. On that same Columbus Day show, Jimmy Kimmel asked people if they could name the ships that sailed on Columbus's first voyage. Among the best answers were the Ninja, the Pina Colada, and the Santa Margarita. Now, if these were just isolated instances of people on the fringe of society being put on the spot, we could simply laugh or feel embarrassed for the person and not give it another thought. But that's not what's going on. What's apparent in these anecdotes is confirmed in studies and surveys. The lack of knowledge is pervasive across all age groups and all academic levels. In the most recent testing of high school seniors by the U.S. Department of Education, only 12% were proficient in American history, far below the results in reading, math, or science, which seem to get more attention. The Intercollegiate Studies Institute gave a similar test to college seniors at 50 institutions around the country, including Harvard and Yale. They scored so poorly that the average grade was an F. Not surprisingly, things aren't any better among the general public. In its annual survey, the Freedom Forum Institute found that less than 1% of adults, our own age group, can name the 5 freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment. Now, I could go on, but I think it's clear enough. Our connection to our heritage is fading. All of us would hate to lose our memory, right? And yet that's what's happening to us as a people. We are losing our collective national memory. Clearly, we are not keeping faith with the high standards the founders envisioned for us. Now, here are a few reasons why we need to fix this problem as a nation and as individuals. First, it's part of our identity as Americans to know certain things about our country. We don't all need to be historians, but there's a general body of information, call it the basics or the essentials, that everyone should learn and never forget. It should be taught and rehearsed in our homes and our schools so that everyone, every citizen knows the fundamentals, and it becomes a part of who we are, individually and collectively. Second, the problem is not just a matter of complacency. There are people who try to fill the void of ignorance with a distorted picture of this country and its founding. Some years ago, I had a conversation with such a person, a prominent tenured professor of American history at Boise State University in Idaho. He told me I was politically biased because I quoted from the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, both of which, he said, are irrelevant today. Now for the third reason. If we had a different form of government, maybe it wouldn't matter so much. But in this country, we govern ourselves. We elect people to safeguard our liberties and maintain what President Lincoln called a government of, by, and for the people. Those who govern do so only with our consent. But here's the problem. According to a national survey, 2/3 of college graduates don't even know that congressional terms are 2 years in the House of Representatives and 6 years in the Senate. Responding to those findings, New York Times columnist Frank Bruni wrote, quote, "You can't tell me that the quality of the men and women we send to Washington isn't affected by such profound and widespread ignorance about what they do there and how the system works." End quote. History can and should inform our decisions when we head to the polls. Knowing where we came from helps us evaluate the current direction of the country and measure how well our elected and appointed officials are doing. Patrick Henry said, "I know of no way of judging the future but by the past." Having an understanding of the past makes us better citizens and voters with a longer view. That alone is reason enough to become well informed. But there's one more thing that should motivate us. Connecting with America's past can greatly enrich your life. The noted historian David McCullough said, "History encourages as nothing else does, a sense of proportion about life. Gives us a sense of the relative scale of our own brief time on earth and how valuable that is." He also said this, "The lessons of history are largely lessons in appreciation. Indifference to history is a form of ingratitude." Close quote. Knowledge about our American heritage doesn't just come with age, and for the most part, it isn't being acquired in schools at any academic level. That's really not surprising, though, because the way the subject is generally taught is fundamentally flawed. Imagine trying to teach algebra or calculus to students who didn't have a working knowledge of basic arithmetic. That's essentially what happens with American history instruction. From the elementary grades through the college years, schools try to pile on more and more information before the basics are understood. Textbooks at the middle school level can be 700 pages long, more than 1,000 pages in college. Now, several years ago, I realized my children didn't know many things I assumed they had learned in school. And as I started taking a more active role in teaching them myself, I wondered, what are the fundamentals everyone should know, young and old alike, and can they be learned quickly and easily? There was certainly no shortage of books on American history, but they were all several hundred pages long. What was missing was a short overview, and that's what I've done. American History in No Time lays out the basics in just a few hours. Even though it's only around 100 pages, nothing major has been left out from before Columbus all the way up to the present. As was mentioned, the book has been used at a number of colleges, but it's easy for anyone to understand, including children and people who haven't liked history before. It's also the perfect refresher. Even those who are reasonably well informed will find many things you either didn't remember, didn't have quite right, or never knew. Now, in tackling such a project, the first thing was to sift from our rich history just those basic essential things everyone should know. Obviously, it's important to be familiar with the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, but we should also know near what major U.S. city you can find an ancient Native American earthen pyramid with a larger footprint than any pyramid in Egypt. What event inspired the writing of the Star-Spangled Banner, and when did it become our national anthem? Which president acquired more territory for the U.S. than Thomas Jefferson did with the Louisiana Purchase? How did the success of the Allied invasion on D-Day hinge on a weather forecast? How long did it take the stock market to recover its value lost in the Great Depression? Now, if you weren't quite sure about any of those, rest assured you're not alone. All of us need a refresher now and then. But I'm confident that most, if not all of us here, consider it a civic duty and even a family responsibility to be familiar enough with our nation's history to be able to pass it down to your children, grandchildren, and others. The problem we face is that many of them don't think it's even important. You might not reach them if you were to present the subject just as an obligation, but young and old alike are drawn to a good story. Getting someone interested in knowing about our past should be no more difficult than getting them to watch a good movie, because our history provides an unlimited supply of amazing stories. For example, what happened at the Battle of Long Island during the Revolutionary War, and the unusually thick fog that rolled in at just the right time and remained after sunrise, allowing George Washington and the Continental Army to escape from an overwhelming British Army and Navy, which to my mind was a miracle and evidence of God's hand in the founding of this country. Samuel B. Morse, a successful portrait painter, over 40 years old, when he saw an unfilled need, wasn't afraid to take a giant leap of faith and do something entirely different with his life by bringing the telegraph to America and much of the world. Women who persisted until they finally achieved universal voting rights 144 years after we declared independence. In World War II, Native American service members, mostly Navajos, being used to transmit secret military messages in their tribal languages, which neither the Japanese nor the Germans were ever able to figure out. Or the United States boldly aiming for the moon before we had even put an astronaut into orbit, to name just a few. But the ultimate goal is not just to know the stories, as important as that is, but to also grasp the principles behind those stories. It's important to know that the Declaration of Independence announced the birth of our nation, but it's more important to really understand what it says, that all men are created equal. that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's good to know how the government works, but it's better to understand why the founders were wary of centralized power and devised a system that would limit it. They knew human nature and knew there would always be some people in authority who would want to restrict the freedoms of others unnecessarily. The founders also knew that most people are basically good and exercise sound judgment, which is why they instituted a radical concept, entrusting you and me with the ultimate control of the government. It's important to know about the wars this nation has fought, but it's more important to understand that freedom is worth fighting for, and even dying for, to preserve. Every citizen should feel a deep sense of gratitude to the men and women currently in uniform, and all veterans, especially those who lost their lives, more than 1 million now since the founding. In nearly all cases, they were young. They gave up their chance for a long life so you and I could live to be old and free. It's not enough to know that in less than 200 years, the United States became the wealthiest and most powerful nation in the world. We should also see that self-reliance, capitalism, the rule of law and the Constitution, ingenuity, sacrifice, hard work, and divine providence brought it about. And realize that when people are free, anything is possible. These principles and others found in our history can guide our personal lives and steer our country to an even brighter future. That's why this is so important. Knowing the history of America helps us understand those guiding principles. We see them personified in the men and women who went before us. Look, all of us want the people we care about to have a clear picture of the world we live in. We want them to know that life hasn't always been so comfortable or convenient or secure, and won't stay that way on its own. We want them to know that being an American is more than just where we live, our ancestry, or the games we play, or the shows we watch. We want them to be grateful for their circumstances and for all the people, present and past, who made it possible. In short, we want them to love this country, but it's no different than with a person. You can't love someone you don't know. By the same token, you can't really love a country you know hardly anything about. Now, I'll close with this thought. Previous generations have passed down to us inspired founding documents and a brilliant government structure, a large and productive economy, a beautiful land with natural resources in abundance and rich in variety, and a society with freedoms and a way of life that are the envy of many in the world. But there is evidence all around us that we are losing the connection to our heritage and our sense of patriotism. People who won't stand for the national anthem or the flag, who can't answer simple questions about our country, who on their own deface and rip down historical monuments, people who try to silence opinions they don't like, and fail to recognize the greatness of our founders because they weren't perfect. Whichever side of the political aisle you're on, we must never lose sight of the fact that we are all Americans. Being familiar with our common history and values will help bind us together, even when we have disagreements. We need not wait for schools, the government, the media, or anyone else to give us that connection to the past. We can learn the basics of our nation's history, what it really means to be an American, on our own, individually, in our families, and in organizations such as Rotary. And by so doing, we will show our gratitude for the remarkable legacy we've inherited as citizens of the United States of America, and help preserve what George Washington called the brightest morn that ever dawned upon any country. Thank you. Well, thank you. As was mentioned, I was a professional musician when I was younger, so I'd like to close by playing something for you, and I'll do that down front. I I started doing this after I'd already given a number of speeches, and people seemed to like it. So I've been doing it ever since. But I have to confess it's probably also a bit of insurance. I figure if the speech doesn't go well, I might be able to redeem myself in saxophone. I also play the flute, and it would probably make more sense to bring the flute because all you have to do is put the joints together and go. But with saxophone, you have to contend with a reed. So let me see if this wants to vibrate today. I did that to a group down in Punta Gorda, Florida. They all applauded. It was I was taken aback. I figured they were starved for entertainment down there. So. But this is what I usually play.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Maybe you've just done a warm-up for the Super Bowl next year. The electric guitar last night, some of you may have heard. That was wonderful. And thank you for your presentation. I do want y'all to know that Mr. Russell's book is available for $15 at a discount for us today. It's over here at the table by the door. If you all would like him to sign one and buy one, you certainly may. It is very thin, as he mentioned, and a quick read that we all need to know. Star Spangled Banner was the War of 1812. Battle of Fort McHenry. How'd I do?
That's good.
All right. Thank you very much for doing that. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Russell? We have a few minutes.
Nice.
Rusty's got one.
Sir, would you touch on the this controversy that has come up over the 1619 project?
Okay. And I'll try to avoid being political.
You don't have to do that.
I honor the request of Rotarians. I've spoken to more than 100, but I will touch on that. It's kind of interesting that question has come up in the last 3 or 4 Rotary speeches that I've given. So what I would say about that, from what I understand about the 1619 project, it casts American history in the light of, totally in the light of race relations. And I think that is myopic and is not fair to the, it's not a good way to study our nation's history. Race relations, good and bad, have been a part of our history from the very beginning, but it's not the sum total of our history, and so I think looking at our entire history through that prism does a disservice, and it steers you away from some of the other things that truly are inspiring about our history. And so I hope that was, yes, sir.
What resistance is the whole effort to bring U.S. history back into the schools? What resistance is keeping that from happening?
Well, it's never really left. At least in grade schools, the way it's taught, is, I'm sure has changed over the years, but in college, I guess that is definitely true. When I went to school, everybody had to take an American history survey course. Now, how many colleges, what percentage of colleges in the country require a survey course in basic American history?
Probably none.
No, it's 18%, but that still is shocking to me, that only 18% of the colleges require that. So it's definitely changed at the college level. But as I said in the speech, I think one of the major problems is that the way the subject is taught is fundamentally flawed. And so that's why I think the book really fills a huge void in the literature. There's nothing comparable that allows someone to get the basics in some cases one sitting. And so you can see the broad expanse of history, and then if you go into more detail, then it makes sense. But now, they give students 700 to 1,000 page textbooks, and without that foundation established first, it's just a jumble of facts that are, whatever is covered in class, very little is retained. I mean, the studies and surveys for decades have shown that. Yes, in the back there.
Where can we get a copy of your book?
I didn't ask him to say that, I promise. It is also sold on Amazon, but yes, see.
Yes, sir. What would be the best avenue that we as a society could take to help change that focus? Would it start at the elementary school level or what?
Well, I think they're exposing children at a young age to these things is very important. And sometimes people will ask, at what age is the book most appropriate? And I remember my very first speech was down in Fort Lauderdale, and a woman came up with her two grandbabies. One was an infant in her arms, and the other one was a toddler. And she got one for each of them, and I applaud her for wanting to get a jump on it, but that might be a little too young. But there is value to exposing children to our history at a young age, even if they don't understand everything. It hasn't been all that many generations ago that parents took a more active role in teaching children themselves, and we've kind of moved away from that, and that's one of the reasons why, that's what started me on this in the first place. I wanted something where I could sit down with my children and in 5 or 10 minutes teach them something meaningful about the country. I couldn't find even one, book that would fit that bill. And so as in the course of doing that family project, and I realized that this wasn't just a family problem of mine, and this was nationwide. And so the book became more sophisticated as a result of that, so that it could be, used at the college level. But I kept the same format, it's divided into short sections that can be read in around 5 minutes each, which I think probably bodes well with attention spans having lessened over the years. Yes, sir.
Yes, it's my understanding that the Constitution of the state of South Carolina requires that all universities in this state require that all their students take a class in the founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, etc. 0 universities in this state honor that mandate. In other words, they're operating illegally, to the best of my knowledge. And I even asked Dr. Caslin about this when he came and spoke to us about a year ago. And there's been no change about this at all. So, wondered what your thoughts are.
Well, I didn't know that. I'm not familiar with the South Carolina Constitution, but whenever I go out of town, I always call on the local college, and so after this meeting, I'm headed over to USC. There's one professor in particular that I want to call on, Dr. Thomas Brown, who's the main professor who teaches the American History survey course, at least this year. And so I'm going to be calling on him, and I'll ask him now. Thank you. Do we have time?
One more.
One more, yes. Yes, sir.
One quote from my college education that stuck with me right to the end. Really, a history professor said, the greatest threat to democracy is an uneducated electorate. And I think we're seeing the results of that in our country right now, how easily people spread rumors and how easily those rumors and falsehoods are accepted by people who don't know better. And it's really, I see it as a threat to our democracy today, and I think we've all seen it in the last month.
Yes. Absolutely true. Okay, thank you so much.
Mr. Russell, thank you so much for being here today. You have a thank you from our club.
You are writing more books.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You certainly don't need to rewrite the history of America. Thank you for not doing that. Okay, so again, his books are available right over there where past President Hal Stevenson is. If anybody would like to get one today and maybe get a signature from the author. We are not meeting next week, but President-elect Catherine, would you like to tell us who's coming in 2 weeks on February 22nd when the board will also be meeting?
Yes. We will have State Superintendent Molly Spearman.
State Superintendent Molly Spearman. She'll have lots of questions to answer that day. So, we can even ask her about American history in today's South Carolina high schools. Okay, are we going to end in song? Okay.
Can't do it as slow as he did.
Yeah, we're going to sing our version, okay?